How you doing, Internet? I'm B-Nuts, and today I'd like to take a look at the HGBF Gundam 00 Shia Qan from Gundam Build Fighters Tri Island Wars. But before I do, there's something that I should probably take off of this as I have it currently. So there I have removed the BTF Full Saber 5 from the backing, and it does come with this attachment assembly so that it can be used in either HG Qantas, and it does also come with its own separate backing, which I have also painted green. And don't worry, I will be reviewing this thing separately as well. But for now, I would like to focus on this, which I do have to admit is not a straight build, as I have added some things onto it. I should probably mention that there's a good deal here that's based on the original high-grade Quanta that came out a good while back, and so this kit does have some aged components to it, but I do still believe it's pretty good. And it also has a number of new components, mostly those armor pieces, which are unique to the Shia Qan. More Shia Qan armor parts, transparent blue parts from the transient, polycaps and foil stickers, more old pieces, including some armor pieces from the Quanta. Here you can distinctly see the Quanta's V-fin and some of the head pieces, as well as the back. And my thought is that there is a chance you could build the original Quanta head if you wanted to, provided you didn't like the cat ears on this one, because according to what I've heard, either you like it or you don't. And if I turn this around, because of the way my camera is, you can see this part, which goes into the original Quanta's head, as well as the forehead jewel is here as well. Because even though you have a sticker for the forehead jewel in this one, you still have the option of using the clear plastic piece, which I believe is great. And there are some things that I've done with this kit, and some of them you can see. I've painted parts like the shoulders, knees, and feet, basically just taking cues from the Kamiki burning, sort of giving it additional GN condensers. But the part in the back of the head there, this one, this long one, that's a sticker, and most of it is black. I admit that if I had known that, then I probably would have just painted it with the same metallic blue. What I'm using for the tail, extending the cat theme, is the heat rod from the Goof R35. And I've used a pin vise to drill the hole. It's not exactly neat. In fact, it's far from neat because the bit I was using isn't big enough for it. Without it, it's still kind of catty. We got the Shia Qan, which I like to call Nyaanta. Appearance-wise, there's nothing really here for me to complain about. Green is one of my favorite colors, and where it's not green, it does pop. And there's some nice seals behind the condensers as well, to make them shine, which I really do appreciate. Bandai doesn't always do that. And even though these skirts are long, they can move out of the way. The only problem is something that I put in there when the tail's not there. There is that gap and hole where the back armor used to be on the original Quanta, but it also comes with a little bit of a benefit that it's not there on this one. As well, the lighter, thinner armor suits Shia's image as a sort of speeding powerhouse, and as opposed to the Portent, which was a support type, this is a powerhouse all on its own. It's capable of delivering significantly more damage than the Portent was. The shield binder looks smaller, but it also does serve its purpose. I do like both the sculpt and the color choices. They are pretty accurate to the show. There are some things that get in the way or get moved perhaps a little too much, and this waist hasn't been all that strong enough to hold up the binder even without the weapons attached. But other than that, it is a pretty good looking model. I do have to admit that one of the other modifications I made was using that forehead jewel, the plastic one, rather than the sticker. The head on this is original to Shia, so it is differently shaped, differently sculpted from the one on the original Quanta, and I do think it works, especially since many people were complaining that the original Quanta's head was not to scale or shaped right. So when they made this custom design, they weren't held to that sort of thing because they could do whatever they want with a custom. For articulation, the head goes back only this far, forward quite a lot, tilting side to side, rotate. Yeah, it does have a little bit less trouble due to the shallower collar, and as well the back doesn't contact that much. The binder on the back swivels there and there, goes up and down, and over here that moves and turns. So there are a lot of articulation points even before you get to the binder itself. Whoops. This opens all the way, and the holders for the partisans or sword bits move a little bit as well. The GN drive in here, it's supposed to actually come out this way and then turn so that it can connect to the one in the back, just like the original Quanta. And then it can also use sort of speed flight mode. Waist swivel, slight, very slight ab crunch, and it's not really anything to write home about. Arm goes up only that far. Rotate around. Kind of has the same problem that a lot of plastic ball joint shoulders seem to have. And it goes up only that far. Yeah. I can get rid of that actually. Arm is double jointed but only goes that far. But then you have that wrist thing that seems to appear on quite a few double O's. And wrist on the ball joint. The front skirt is as non-existent as the original, and it is on a simple swivel and keeps on popping off. The side skirt can rotate up like that before it starts coming out of its peg, and side, back and forward, so it can get out of the way pretty easily and fully. The back skirt, well, these are actually the back skirt and they're pretty stationary, but these blade things can swivel around all you would really want to without the top half interfering. It can go pretty much all the way, which is downright ridiculous. Front skirt isn't going to interfere at all with much of anything because it's not really there. Front kick, side kick, back, well, move the skirt out of the way, and then it can go like that. The leg, double bend at the knee, and since the back armor isn't there over here, it can go all the way. Ankles tilt all the way. It felt like that popped off. I guess either it did and I moved it back on unconsciously, or it didn't. Ankle armor goes up like that. There's very little tilt back and forth, and swivel all the way around. So articulation is pretty good. It's better than the original HG because some things have been improved by the reduced armor. Things do tend to pop off, and that can get pretty annoying. For accessories that come with this model, you have the open palm hand that you see there, 2 holding hands, a simple GN sword, which does not transform, but you can bet that it can shoot, same as the other. Its blade is made with one of the ends of the transients, GN partisans, you can see there. That is exactly the end. So you have 2 of these bits, and you can actually get the other one. There's 1 and 2. These parts are the same as here. So that's what those came from. The sword bits are partisan heads from the transient. And even though they are very similar, I'm going to put that down, turn this around, and even if I turn this around, you'll see that on the original these are fully tuned and solid, but these ones have a bit of a hollow on the underside. It's part of the attachment point for the binder, but otherwise the clear parts and these attachment parts are exactly the same as on the Transient's GN Partisan. There is another option here. If you take off one of these bits and slide this from the binder, you can add it to the bit at the end, and it forms a sort of shield or an independent gun because those can still open up, and then you can add it to the back of the arm. However, you can only do it on the one side because there's no slot on this side. So you just add it onto here like that and hope that it doesn't fall off just like that did. So in a way it's also sort of like the what were they, Katars that came with the 00 riser, because those also had a weak attachment point and it was really easy to have those come off on you. So that's probably something that you would want to set last so that it doesn't come off on you as you're trying to pose it. But that is something that you can do with it as well. Oh, and I also should mention before I forget again that this part in the binder can open, and then you can see behind it or underneath it the GN drive underneath, and that's actually not what you're peeking at something that's between it and the other piece. That's a clear piece with a sticker underneath it, and it's kind of a shame that they had to do it that way rather than having that be part of the drive. So to arm up the binder, I should put this back on, and then I can put on these bits. I'm doing this without the manual for a reason that I think that it's simple enough that you should be able to do it without. The real grade Quanta, though, has a more complex system, so until you memorize how to do it, it's probably wiser to do it with the manual as your guide. Angle those away so that I don't have to worry about more collisions with the other bits. One more. Now if you have all of those opened up, you can have her flying around in some sort of hyper speed mode, which can be pretty cool if you can get her up onto an action base. I do believe I'll end up gluing those centerpieces. Even the yellow piece there fell off, and I'm going to have to deal with that. But before I do, there's one last accessory to attach, and it is a pretty important one. It's got a simple hilt, and it just slides in like that. And then it's just there. So there's the sword and there's the shield and binder. You can actually close that now. Oop. Tilty head. And that's basically all there is to this model. But it being kind of basic isn't that bad a thing, because that just means that you can do a whole bunch with it. And you can put it into some pretty cool poses as well. Although that's a bit heavy for the waist, but still, it's pretty good. And so it is a fairly good model all on its own. Just as long as you can get past the little issues that it has. It still looks good, it still moves pretty good, it's well articulated. If you don't like the cat ears, that's one thing, and you can certainly go for other options, because there's another head basically included within the box. And so there are a bunch of points to compare here. The original GN sword is of course longer and bigger, but I've also thought that the Buster modes look kind of goofy. Of course, for detail, you're not going to beat an RG with an HG, but you can compare some of their proportions, and you can see that the Nyaanta is actually a smaller suit, as well as having smaller armor. The shoulder pads are symmetrical, and they're also shaped differently. Chest is smaller. You also don't see vents on the chest of the Nyaanta. The head, of course, is different. The head sculpting on the original is much more complex. I think proportion-wise, the original has things looking much bigger, and as well it has the asymmetrical arms covers, which the Shia Qan does not, and it's more angular. The Shia Qan has some curves in it that the original does not. And of course, the binder, like the sword, is smaller on the Shia Qan. And why not compare to the other unit that Shia borrowed from? In this case, the Sunstorm, which is my repainted Transient. It's also taller, more angular. Keep the comparisons going. How about something Master Grade sized? Here, once again, is my Star Wish, and the Shia Qan comes about to her waist. I don't think Shia will take that lying down. For the last gunpla unit, how about Shia's original, the G Portent? And it's about the same size, I think, but it is interesting because they're both part of the XL line. The G Portent is based off of the Sakiburi, I believe. It's one of the civilian adapted units that shows up at the end of the movie, whereas the Quanta was featured in the main part of Awakening of the Trailblazer. And as I said before, the Portent over here is more of a support unit. This is supposedly the powerhouse. And final comparison before we close this off, the Figma Jossel von Flugel, who is always standing with attitude. And I think this robot would be annoyed that all of the massive mechs that humans are so proud of are actually mostly shorter than she is. Before I close out, I wanted you to see the difference in length between their swords. From that position, the original Quantas reaches the edge of the box, and this is maybe 2/3 of the way, if lucky. So the original GN Sword 5 is definitely longer, although it's also, I think, shaped more awkwardly because much of that is hilt. So that gets hit right and it's going to have problems. But I do believe that it's going to have a GN field deployed to help protect it from such obvious attacks. That about wraps it up for this video. I hope you enjoyed it. And also I hope that some of the things that I said can be helpful in whether or not you decide to buy the Shia Qan, the Nyaanta, and any customizations that you could do with it, because there's plenty of potential here as well. I do believe that it is the most complete model that came out of Island Wars, although the Gansalot isn't that bad. The Scramble is definitely incomplete, and the Lightning Strider backpack depends on you having the lightning in the first place. As well, the Z2 is ridiculously tall and pointed, and I think that the Tryon 3 gets the point across better than it does. But, you know, it's up to personal taste, so if you like a certain thing, definitely go for it. You can comment below what you think and any suggestions you might have about anything you might want reviewed. You can also like and subscribe to show your support. Hope you enjoyed this video. I hope to see you next time. Bye bye. Oh, I forgot to give Kitty back her tail. What's that behind you? Ah! Damn sneak attack.